Hey there, students. In this lecture, I'm going to discuss the rise of Russia in the 15th through the 17th centuries. Really, this is kind of a prelude to my lecture on Peter the Great, and I'm going to go into what's going on in Russia and also what's going on in Central and Eastern Europe so you can see the context of the rise of Peter the Great and his construction of an absolutist state in Russia, where the absolutist state was really well underway by the time that he got there. Quick shout out to Haley and all of my friends at Pinnacle High School. In 1648, the end of the 30 Years' War, the political entities of Central and Eastern Europe were the Ottoman Empire, the Habsburg monarchy, Prussia, Poland, and Russia, also known as Muscovy. Russia is not really called Russia until until a bit later, but originally Muscovy, which is the same word that Moscow comes from. So as far as establishing some background here, here is the Byzantine Empire in the 11th century. Now, the Byzantine Empire in the Middle Ages served as a buffer state between Islamic empires and Christian Europe. You can see here that the Byzantine Empire is in modern-day Turkey, modern-day Greece, and up into the Balkan Peninsula. Here are the walls of Constantinople. Now, if you want to build a wall, here is how it's done. That is an amazing wall. Now, when you go over the first one, you end up being in what is essentially a pit with people firing down at you. These walls did not fall for several centuries when Constantinople was really under constant threat of attack from the Ottoman Turks. Now, a game changer was the cannon. Now, the cannon is one of those rare technologies that started big and got small. You would think that firearms and then those progressed to cannons. Really, the cannon came first, the really, really big cannon. And then people started to think about how can we make this smaller? How can we make this more maneuverable on the battlefield? How can we put this in somebody's hand so that they can shoot it? But the earliest cannon, I mean, they were just enormous. And so as this comes around, Constantinople cannot really hide behind the walls that had served it so well in the Middle Ages. 1453 is a very important date in European and world history. This is the date of the fall of Constantinople. And you can see here that in 1450, all the Byzantine Empire had left was most of the Peloponnesus and Constantinople itself. Here is Sultan Mehmet II marching on Constantinople. Quick shout out to my friend Gul if she's watching, always talking about how she'd like to hear more about the Ottoman Empire. And so the Ottoman Empire peaked in 1683. And at this time, the Ottoman Empire spanned from North Africa to the Middle East to southeastern Europe. You can see here that it includes Egypt, it includes modern-day Turkey, it includes pretty much all of the Balkan Peninsula and North Africa. And of course, you see a lot of warfare here around the Balkan Peninsula and the Black Sea, which of course has yielded so many different ethnic and religious groups in that area today. Now, the other principal entity in this area is the Habsburg monarchy, Austria-Hungary. And the Ottoman-Habsburg wars were a series of intermittent conflicts between 1526 and 1791. The Habsburg monarchs of Austria-Hungary fought the Ottomans for control of the Balkan Peninsula over 2 centuries. And this is important because at one point, the Ottomans, actually I think at a few points, the Ottomans had Vienna, the Habsburg capital, under siege. Of course, they never took Vienna, and the Habsburgs began to assert themselves later on, but the Ottomans certainly did make inroads into the Habsburg Empire. Now then there's Prussia, a modest but modern military state, and Prussia is there to the north of the Habsburgs. Now you've got all of these entities here, okay? You've got the Ottoman Empire, you've got the Habsburg monarchy, and then you've got the Prussians, and, who is going to inherit the empire, all right? And the answer here is Russia, essentially, is going to inherit the Byzantine Empire. At least this is how the Russians see it. Russia started out as the Grand Duchy of Muscovy, known as that through the 16th century from its foundation in the 13th century. Moscow started out as a tributary state. The Muscovite princes paid tribute to the Mongol Empire until 1480. And in 1480, the Mongols retreated, leaving Muscovy as an independent kingdom. Ivan III proclaimed Muscovy to be independent in 1480, and this is only a few decades after the fall of the Byzantine Empire. And Ivan saw Russia as the third Rome. He married a Byzantine princess, and he began to use the Byzantine double-headed eagle on official correspondence. And this is the coat of arms of the Russian Empire, with this Byzantine double eagle. And this is something that even the president of Russia uses today. If you go to Vladimir Putin's website, you will see this double-headed eagle that is today the seal of the president of Russia. And then the leader of Russia takes on the name Tsar, which is a variant of Caesar, all right? So essentially taking this term from the emperor and appropriating it to refer to the Russian ruler as essentially the Caesar of the Third Rome. And Russia, even before absolutism was cool, was governed as an autocracy. That, the Russian czars pretty much had free reign over the country. Now, of course, there were entrenched classes. There were the boyars, the Russian nobility. There were the streltsy. These are the musketeers, the elite corps. In some ways, maybe you could compare them to the Praetorian Guard or perhaps to the Janissaries in the Ottoman Empire. And then there was the Russian Orthodox Church. So Russian monarchs, even though autocracy is something that's happening in Russia before it's happened in other places, they are going to be grappling with these entrenched classes. And then there is Ivan IV, the Terrible, Ivan the Terrible, or as the Russians call him, Ivan Grozny. And you see here the Tsar versus the boyars. Now, this conflict between Ivan the Terrible and the boyars really came to a head when Ivan decided that he was just going to leave Moscow. He was just going to get on his sleigh and just head out. And so the people practically begged him to come back because they didn't want to be at the mercy of the boyars. And he said, well, I'll come back, but I will need powers. I will need powers to deal with my enemies. And he got those powers, and he subdued the boyars to a large extent, to a much larger extent than they'd really been subdued at that point in anywhere else in Europe. Now, Ivan also subdued his own son. He had an argument with his son. I think his wife was wearing something that was immodest, and Ivan got so angry about that he hit his son in the head with a royal scepter or stick or whatever you want to call it. And this painting here shows Ivan's shock as he realizes he just killed his kid. So there you have it, this Russian autocracy that is, really filling the void in some ways that this Byzantine Empire left. You've got the Ottoman Empire, the Habsburg Empire, and then you've got the ascendant Russians and Prussians who are really going to form, these great powers of Central and Eastern Europe. So if you want more, go ahead and take a look at my lecture on Peter the Great. It's always a pleasure.